What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch, making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today, I want to talk a little bit about fees, but and Lofty, and really though, just we had a discussion in the Discord and also in one of my videos and some of the comments underneath recently about just talking about sort of general business ideas a little bit more and some concepts that I really take for granted, but clearly not everybody does. And so I had a discussion in the Discord with Jerry, the founder of Lofty, today. Um, over the course of a couple of days, there's a couple of replies that really leads me to believe this is another, that fees and like fee burden of a transaction is something that is just not common knowledge or isn't well known enough that it's just obvious to everybody in the way that I think it is when I look at deals. And so, um, let's say I'm on here, I find a deal, willing, and I have $100. Like I'm using 100 to make the math easy. Um, but so as an investor, let's see, we've got $100 to invest. A buyer's willing to pay $100 for an investment, right? Maybe the token's $100. Maybe I'm buying two tokens, whatever it is. Um, I do want to say, I'm going to be talking about real estate commissions here. Because I'm a realtor, I get super nervous about it because they have all these, there's the antitrust rules and whatnot make it so we're really not supposed to speak publicly about commission amounts. I'm going to use 6%, not because that's the set commission, because commissions are completely negotiable, but because it's the number that Jerry threw out when he was using it. And really, to be fair, in a lot of markets, the average, I'm sure, is significantly below that amount. But regardless, I'm going to use 6% in my math just to make things easy. Um, so he's comparing a traditional transaction for every $100 of sale price. If you're paying 6%, that's a 6% fee. And so your seller's only receiving $94. And so this is basically as he's describing the traditional model and what he's comparing his fees against. And so, he's like, hey, our fees are half of what, we charge sellers half of what they would traditionally pay. And so this is what I think it looks like in his mind. I don't want to be attributing too much to Jerry specifically. He's definitely not the only one that's making this mistake, and this is talked about. This is something that you see all over the place. I mean, you see agents right now saying, "Oh, I'm only going to charge you. I'll list it for you, and I'll only charge you 3%." And we're going to ask the seller agent to pay the other 3. Again, could be any number, right? Could be 27%, could be 2%. I'm not saying that those numbers are fixed. These are just numbers that are getting thrown around, right? And from the perspective, so I think that in his mind, so this is how, okay, seller pays $3 fee, and then okay, well, we've got $94, and then there's the fee is right. So I think he's thinking about it like this, right? He's like, well, the buyer's paying $3 of it, so the buyer's now paying $103. Well, if we assume rational market participants, they don't care whether it's a fee or part of the purchase price. They already decided this investment's worth $100 for them. So they're not paying $100 plus $3 in fees, and then the seller receives 97%. The seller's paying 3%. The buyer's willing to pay less now because they're paying $3 in fees. So the seller receives the same $94. This is a very gross overgeneralization. This is assuming that the $6 fee is a fixed fee, not a percent. And so this is where I've been pretty imprecise when I talk about this, and I want to make a correction. Before I do that, I remember to ask everybody to please like and subscribe. If you're not already a member of just the general fractional real estate investors Discord, please feel free to join that. There's a link in the description below. And one more thing. Oh, and all the sites that I currently invest on, I have links to those in there. So if you're looking at Lofty or Mogul or Ground Floor or Saul's Law or Collab, those are sites that I currently invest on. Just because I do doesn't mean that you should, right? Do your own due diligence on the platforms and on any investments on there. But I do have links in the description of this video for that too. So, and I said I was going to start saying tickle that like button, so please do that. Yeah, me and my 11-year-old are brainstorming on ways to make my channel grow faster, and that is one of our ideas. So anyway, back to this. And where I've been wrong the whole time when I'm doing this, and I'm going to explain why, right? Because this assumes that that $6 fee is fixed. But really, with the model of 3% paid by the buyer, 3% paid by the seller, um, you end up with a smaller fee, right? You end up only paying 2.91% or $2.91 per hundred and $2.91 per hundred in each side. So in that scenario, the seller's actually making 17 cents more per $100. So there is an actual savings from the way you distribute it. But it's because it is a reduction in the overall fee per $100, and that might seem like it doesn't make any sense because we just talked about, wait, no, we're just breaking up the $6, three and three. Um, but let me show you how I got there with some basic math, right? Again, I'm a buyer. I'm only willing to invest $100 in this investment, whether or not I have to pay fees. I want my total basis to be $100, right? And so if I have to pay a 300 or a 3% fee on top of my purchase price, that means I'm only willing to spend $97.09. And so then 3% on top of that is another 291. Then my total purchase price is $100. So already you can see I saved 9 cents there, right, on that fee. But as a buyer, I'm still paying the full $100. The seller, when we look at that, okay, so the new sales price is $97.09. The seller's only paying a 3% fee on that $97.09. And so the seller's actually receiving $94.17 in this example versus $94 per hundred, right? And so the total fees end up not being $6 because the way we broke it up, it ended up being $5.83. And so, yes, it is cheaper broken up this way for the seller, right? The seller's actually receiving more because even though this is now, the fees being charged in this scenario are still 6% of the transaction price, but now the transaction price is lower because of how the buyer's paying the fees, right? And so total fees now in this scenario are $5.83. I know this math doesn't add up. It's rounding error. I just cut it off at cents, right? So you're really a penny off one way or the other. But so that ends up being 5.83%. So yes, in actuality, you are saving a tiny bit by shifting some to the buyer side. If that's really the savings that you're going after, you should move the whole fee over to the buyer side, right? And then you'd even be a little bit better off. Um, that a couple of things though, right? This assumes rational market participants, meaning the buyer doesn't care if his $100 is being spent on the investment or on the fees, right? Which I shouldn't. If all I care about is my return on investment, my fees are part of that calculation. So if I think this particular investment is worth $100, I'm going to take the fees that I'm paying into account, right? And so, um, in that scenario, in a scenario where you have people that are like, oh, that's just the cost of doing business, I'm going to pay it on top. You will see that a little bit more in the retail real estate market, right? Like home buyers and sellers that are going to live in there. They're thinking a little bit less, I think, about the math of it, but especially on a platform like this where we're talking about investments, moving that fee from one side to the other, it has to reduce your purchase price, right? I have to, as a rational investor, I have to pay less if I'm going to pay 3% on top. And so, yes, I mean, I have been being a little bit imprecise. It's 5.83, not 6, right? So you're getting a little bit of savings. And so, sorry about that. I do think I've made a couple disclaimers early on that I do very much what I call guerrilla math, right? I'm looking at pretty rough numbers because anytime that we are, making projections into the future and whatnot, there's no reason to be too precise because we just can't know the future. But it is, if I'm gonna criticize, no, it's the same thing either way. It should be perfectly honest and say no, it's actually a tiny bit different by doing it this way, right? Um, Now, at the same time, that's completely ignoring the effects of the operating reserve contribution on top of this. I know every time I bring that up, there are people that want to stab me in the Discord, and so I'm going to leave that part out of here. But just keep in mind that again, if I'm only willing to pay $100, and then if I wanted to pay $100, and then plus whatever additional benefit I get from that operating reserve, um, contribution, which is only a small fraction of the contribution I'm making, that should come into play as well, right? And I think that that's, and I want to just be clear though, I am in no way criticizing Lofty for making money on fees. Like I want them to make money. I want this platform to survive. I'm doing very well on the platform at the moment. I think it's going to be a great place in the future. Hopefully, they clean up a lot of the problems that they have, and in the future, it'll be a great place for new investors to invest. At the moment, I think it's really a better place for people that are, have a lot, or have a lot of time to spend digging into deals and have some knowledge to understand what's a deal and what's not. Um, but I want, I want them to make money and as much as they can and still have a place where investors make money as well. I just want it to be, I just don't like the games where we're like pretending that, and I said that pretending, and I think Jerry took offense to that from his response, when I was like, I don't like to, like, it's not him, it's in general people do this with fees, right? Like the transaction has to cover a certain fee, right? The total investment has to cover a certain fee. It's not one side or the other. When you move it back and forth, if it were a fixed dollar amount, it would have no impact whatsoever on the price that somebody's willing to pay and the net that goes to the seller. Now, because of the way, because it reduces the fee if you reduce the purchase price by shifting it, it does, and we saw that effect. It's very minimal, but it does exist. Um, you know, with that in mind, maybe they should think about moving the whole fee to the buyer side. But I know he's sensitive about it because he mentioned that a lot of buyers criticize the fees that they have. And I think I don't think that's fair. Like I'm like I said, I mean, I want him to charge as much as he can and still have a viable marketplace, right? Like I want them to make money. I do hope that over time, they're able to make it work with lower transaction fees because they're basically doing the work once and then selling the property, hopefully hundreds of times, and it's not a ton of maintenance for them to be able to do that. Um, but who knows? I mean, maybe that's not possible. But it isn't. I have no problem with whatever the fee is. It's just if we're going to compare it to a traditional sales model, I just want us to really understand, um, what we're comparing here. And if you're going to do an apples to apples comparison, I think you just have to look at the total fees in the transaction. Just looking at half of it doesn't tell you the true picture. I think that's all I've got for today. Again, let me know if stuff like this you think is helpful. I mean, this is stuff that it's economics 101 as far as like burdens of taxes and burdens of fees and whatnot. Like it's a very basic principle. And like I said, I mean, it's just something that I take for granted, and I take it for granted to the point that I just assume everybody I'm talking to knows this, and if they're saying something that's contrary to the way this works, I just, a lot of times it makes me worry that they have some bad intentions and they're trying to hide something. Um, I know that's false. I know that that's not accurate, but that's it always hits me that way to begin with, and that's why I make the pretending comment, right? Like it just is like, oh, I think he's just saying it this way for marketing, but I think he truly understands how it actually works. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe it is, and so hopefully, Jerry, if you see this, I know you don't watch my videos, but if you happen to, or somebody shares it with you, I really have no ill will towards you. I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm just trying to clear up how it actually works, like in a deal, like how it impacts investors. And again, it's assuming rational buyers and sellers. And I know on our current, investors on the platform, maybe that's not the most accurate assumption, right? Like we've got people doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So, but on the margin or on the, overall, I would expect to see that. And I think that we should talk about and build towards that being the ideal, right? Or that being, the way that it works. And when we talk about it and when we're working on things, I think it should be, in that, with that goal in mind, right? That it's operating in a way that rational people would use it. Um, and then we talk about it in a way that they would make those sorts of decisions. Wow. Usually I blame it on being up late, but it is early afternoon right now, and I'm still stumbling on words, so I've got nothing. Anyway, until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes, just like this one, so that you don't have to.